Welcome to the fourth program of the ELIAMEP Medyascope media series, in short ELIMED, a joint project of ELIAMEP, Medyascope and the Center for Applied Turkey Studies, CATS, which is based at the think tank SWP here in Berlin and supported by Stiftung Mercator and the German Federal Foreign Office. CATS is also the curator of the so-called CATS Network, an international network of think tanks and research institutions working on Turkey. ELIMED is a project of this network. The ELIMED series consists of 7 programs touching upon different issues of Turkey's domestic and foreign policy. For each webinar, a policy paper summarizing the key points raised during these webinars will also be published. In this way, ELIMED aims to contribute to a more informed and sophisticated debate on these important issues. Another aim of the project is to have at least 50% women in the programs and to include also examples from outside Turkey. And as you will see soon, we today perfectly fit these criteria. Our topic today is to what extent the Turkish opposition, the opposition alliance, is a value-based alliance. What values are these? How credible are the participating parties and politicians? And how do voters care at all? Or will not the economy or other issues be more important at the final decision at the ballot box? We will discuss these issues with 3 outstanding experts, Sezin Öney, Osman Sert, and Özge Moncu Aybars, whom you will see soon, and whom I welcome to the program, thanking them for joining. I would like to start our discussion with our international example, in this case Hungary, where the opposition tried something similar to Turkey, a joint candidate of several parties to run against an authoritarian prime minister. The elections took place in April. The result was very clear. Orban again won with a big margin, also his party. I would like to ask Sezin Öney at the beginning to briefly summarize what lessons the Hungarian example could teach opposition parties in other countries, which are also facing authoritarian leaders. Sezin Öney resided for many years in Hungary. She studied, among others, Austro-Hungarian history, and is specialized in populism with a focus of the phenomenon both in Hungary and Turkey. Sezin is a journalist and political scientist currently writing for the opinion website Politikol. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you also to ELIAMEP and Medyascope. This is certainly a value-based program, according to what we understand from the introduction as well. Well, to what extent was the alliance, opposition alliance in Hungary, was a value-based alliance? In different periods, for example, at the time of the Budapest mayor elections, the local elections, it was a more value-based election alliance. But afterwards, in the general election, when general elections was taking place, and candidate Peter Markizai, in his campaign, I don't think he really made a value-based campaign in general or endorsed values in the way that's different from Orban. That was the main issue in my view. As we know, Peter Markizai was a conservative candidate. He liked to underline that. He was a young politician, but at the same time, he was a conservative one. And he had won previously in Höd Mezővásárhely, a small town with an impossible name to pronounce for non-Hungarian speakers. And it was the bastion of actually Fidesz for a long time. So in Turkey's case, it's like, of course, Kayseri or Konya are much bigger places, but imagine Kayseri or Konya being lost to CHP, for example. Or at least if we take the example from the recent, for example, Istanbul elections, which we just commemorated the anniversary actually. In the second round, for example, CHP received more votes in the Fatih, conservative Fatih district. It was a land shift, a turning point like that one, when Peter Markizai won at Höd Mezővásárhely. So that victory was the example that he wanted to repeat, and actually the whole opposition wanted to emulate. But it didn't work out. On the contrary, Orban's values were re-endorsed in a way when Peter Markizai didn't say something much different than what Orban was saying. For example, family values, let's say, conservative values in general, Christianity, things like symbolic issues like that were propagated by Peter Markizai in very similar terms and mindset as Orban did. So in that sense, there wasn't a new package waiting for the electorates. That was the idea the electorate got. And although the participation rate wasn't that low compared to Hungarian standards, around 70%, at the same time, there wasn't a big rush from the opposition voters. They didn't flock to the ballot box in a very excited way, so to say, because they were again, in a way, electing another conservative candidate. That was the perception people got, actually. And of course, another surprise was the rise of the Mihazaing, that new party, the new movement, totally anti-immigration movement. And it became the third biggest force, actually, in the Hungarian politics. Again, as you see, we had a wide array of, actually, right-wing selection, right-wing options, ranging from Orban to the opposition itself. And the farthest right, of course, was Mihazaing. And this Our Homeland movement actually made Orban look benign and, in a way, moved Orban to the center. This was the seen in the Hungarian elections, and this is why the opposition actually, in my view, couldn't win. And as different from Turkey, of course, in Hungary at the time there wasn't a big and deepening economic crisis, so the electorate also didn't feel the need to change. And in general, Orban, in a way, now has the reign. And recently there was for example, local elections just recently in Hungary, and it's a deluge of Fidesz, because Fidesz is winning everywhere, including Budapest now. So the opposition is losing ground even farther after the general elections.
Thank you for this introduction. And before we come to the point whether in Turkey we have a newer package and whether there's more motivation, I would like to ask Osman Sert what convinced conservative parties with a background in political Islam, especially Saadet, Deva and Gelecek, to join an alliance with a representative of Kemalism and a nationalist party, two opponents for a long time. Osman Sert is the research director of Ankara Institute, which is also a member of the Katz network, by the way. He has a background in journalism. He was the diplomatic editor at CNN Turk and bureau chief in Jerusalem for TRT. And he served as an advisor for Ahmet Davutoglu when he was both foreign and prime minister. He's one of the editors of Perspective Online and also a columnist at Kara newspaper. This can be brief at the beginning now. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ekrem, for your introduction, and thanks to ELIAMEP and Katz Network and Medyascope for just providing us with this platform. And of course, it's a very good thing to share the same platform with this, prominent ladies talking about the values and against authoritarianism. Regarding how these conservative parties are joining this table of six, let's say. First of all, there are two dynamics becoming possible, and this joining of different parties. Indeed, today the opposition of six are representing almost all of the the political traditions in Turkey, except the Kurdish politics. The leftists and rightists and Islamists and nationalists and Kemalists all are just coming together. I think there are two main dynamics which made this possible. First is the journey of the conservative parties. What they are not defining themselves as conservative, but it is making easier to understand and label them. You know, the Gelecek Deva and Saadet Partisi, the journey they have experienced during a conservative party's rule of the country, especially during the last 10 years. Both Mr. Davutoğlu and Mr. Babacan were active members of AK Party governments, and after a while they were not sharing the experience they are living within AK Party, and especially they have very strong quarrels and clashes with President Erdogan. They do not have the same country vision and the world vision, and that's why they were not sharing the same vision of AK Party, and that's why we shouldn't describe all the conservatives, all the devout Muslims or the Islamist politicians as if they are representing a monolithic political stance. It is not so. On the contrary, if you look at what's happening today to AK Party, President Erdogan just consolidated his power as long as he just canceled the power of the other quote-unquote Islamists. What I'm talking about, Mr. Abdullah Gül, if you call him as an Islamist, or Bülent Arınç, or Abdullah Gül, Ahmet Davutoğlu, or Ali Babacan, or Bashir Atalay. These were the very known Ömer Dinçer, were prominent quote-unquote again Islamist or conservative politicians, and President Erdogan one by one just take them out, kick off the party, and then he owned the party himself. And this made a journey, and they have questioned what they are doing, and they are questioning what kind of a country they are dreaming for. And this is number one thing. And after a while, and I think Professor Davutoğlu was using this, they have seen their limits. But not only the Islamists have seen their limits to rule the country without consulting, without agreeing upon the future with the others. I'm talking about the Kemalists and secularists as the other. And it brought them to the more middle of the political spectrum. But another dynamic is, as if we are not talking about all the Islamists or conservatives are the same, not all of them at the one time, and they are not the same throughout the time. They are not the same as the 20 years ago. It is the same for the Kemalists and secularists as well. Just look at what's happening at the CHP meeting room at the parliament. Just 10 years ago, the very popular names who were famous for creating some convincing rooms for the headscarved girls not to enter into the universities, in order to make them open up their heads, just leave their headscarves. They were being applauded very enthusiastically, ambitiously at the CHP salon. And now today, the CHP leader, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, is just apologizing from the headscarved people that it was something wrong we have done. And our priority should be something different regarding the economy, regarding development, regarding democracy. And these two dynamics are just bringing these two poles much closer to each other. And this made much more easier and possible that this opposition six became possible. Otherwise, suppose that the CHP is still supporting, the very, hardliner secularist line, it won't be possible for the other parties to join this group. Or maybe it was the same. These conservative parties were still just, it was a very old discussion and an old conservative conversation in Turkey that supported quote-unquote Islamist state. I do not remember any time Professor Davutoğlu or Babacan just were supporting an Islamist state, but this was a discussion. Now they are not supporting. Even they are supporting and demanding a secular state, which is as respectful for religions. These both dynamics made this possible, and maybe we can discuss on later on. It is a value-based coming together, but of course we shouldn't be so romantic, because these are political parties. They are not coming together just because of values, but for practical obligations. We can discuss it later on as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you already said something about the CHP. We'll see whether Özge Mumcu Aybaz will agree to this. I mean, I will ask you basically the same question, but from the CHP angle. I know that you're not a CHP politician, but you're an advisor to one of the leading CHP politicians. So why do they join forces with political currents, as Osman Bey has just described, that they fought for decades? I just want to say a brief words about your background. Özge is one of the founders, a current board member and coordinator of the Uğur Mumcu Investigative Journalism Foundation. She has a PhD from the Middle East Technical University, Faculty of Political Science and Public Administration. Her thesis applied political discourse analysis using humor, Germany versus humor, and analysis of Turkish polarized politics through press portrayals. She has written for several outlets like Cumhuriyet, Bir Gün, T24, and Yeni Arayiş since 2010, and since 2018, as I already mentioned, she has been working as a consultant for the CHP Istanbul MP and principal advisor on foreign affairs, Ünal Çeviköz. The floor is yours.
Thank you for ELIAMEP and Katsa Network and the Medyascope and to you, Mr. Güzeldere, for asking me to join the Viably debate. When it comes to CHP, everyone raises an eyebrow because the CHP is the most criticized political party from every political parties in Turkey, not the governing party, not only from the governing party, but these 2 years, I think we had faced a lot of differences in political agenda, and one of them important thing is that the transition to presidential system had created the parliamentary more weakened than its earlier than its power. So what we can say that the parliament is weakened. So the MPs, if you don't have a majority in power in the parliament, you cannot pass a bill. You can only ask questions, political questions, inquiries to the ministers. And also you can use Twitter for political campaigning. So this is what kind of sphere that we are talking about. There is a repression in media, repression to people. For instance, we had 2 years ago, we have the Pride Walk, and it was banned by the governors. So I think 300 people were detained for a while. For joining this banned walk. So we are living in a kind of an era that everyone is oppressed, not the so-called known ones like the Kurds or the students or the syndicate workers. Now everybody is facing with a kind of oppression coming from the governing party, exactly. So CHP, with 6 parties, 3 of them, as Osman mentioned, is coming from the Islamic roots with various different backgrounds. Yes, ideological backgrounds, sure. One of them is a new party, but coming from a nationalistic party from MHP, the Good Party, and CHP, as we have already know, is the founding party of Turkey, and also Democratic Party, the smallest member of this alliance. Well, they had made some meetings, like every month they are meeting with one party is hosting. They had said something that I want to underline. They said something in, I think I have to look at the dates, in 29th and 30 May 2022, like a month ago. They said that they had some key principles. They declared some key principles, but as a quotation, they said, as political parties of different political traditions, we have chosen to cooperate and join forces to make our country more peaceful, happier, more prosperous, freer, and more democratic as we step into the 2nd century of our republic. We will continue this cooperation until we have achieved our goals with the support of our nation. So there are several discussions about this table of 6 we are saying right now. And sometimes it's table of 6, sometimes it's other name, and the governing party is also using that there are some cracks in the table of 6, but As far as I know, there is no cracks, but there are difference of opinions exactly in foreign policy, in other issues, because they are all coming from different ideological traditions, ideological backgrounds, and it's normal to have that kind of political debates inside. But from that key principle on objectives, they have said, declared 10 points. It's strengthening parliamentary system based on the principle of separation of powers, liberal public order, pluralistic participatory and liberal democracy to end all kinds of discrimination, freedom of thought, expression and the press, freedom of religion and conscience, social peace and accountability before an impartial independent judiciary, welfare state and income justice, production and employment-oriented economy, political ethics reform, effective and reputable foreign policy. So the CHP was just the main opposition party, but they are meeting all the time. When I started like advisor 4 years ago, this meetings has just started after a year, I think. From like 3 years, they are meeting with person to person, leader to leader first. Then it changed to table of 6. So it was a process. And also the local elections, winning Istanbul and winning Ankara at the same time, winning the major municipalities, metropolitan municipalities in Turkey, had changed, also altered the atmosphere of that there will be a chance to win the elections. So people know that this kind of presidential system is not working at all, and all the bills are coming to parliamentary is coming from the palace, not from the MPs from the ruling party, although they have their signature on it, and everyone is just powerless in the parliamentary. So they are saying that strengthening parliamentary system, returning to a new system, not return to a new system, returning to an improved parliamentary system, not like the 1982 constitution had just declared as it to be. So, okay, that's in this part, that's what I will tell.
Okay, thank you very much. I also wanted as a next step to quote this declaration of 10 principles from 29 May, but you have done my job. That's why I will skip that and only state that this is exactly the title of our webinar, because this is a declaration of democratic principles, of democratic values that they have agreed upon. So what I would like to discuss with you now is that, is this credible with the participating parties and politicians who have not been very famous the past 20 years of defending these values? Why now? Why is it now important for them? Why have they come together and declare something like this and not some economic program and the development program that is not so much based on democratic values? Maybe we start again with Osman Bey. How credible the parties you mentioned are in now defending democratic rights if they have not been so famous for doing that in the past 20 years?
Thank you. First of all, the value and the importance of democracy is being understood during its absence. That is very important for all the parties, because every time, Turkey passed through very, authoritarian regimes, or the tutelage regimes after coup d'etats, but during the last 5 to 10 years, it is almost a bit exceptional, because for the first time after Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, a leader is ruling the country more than 20 years, and it is just consolidating its power day by day, and a one-man rule is being applied through democratic means. Yes, there is elections. Yes, there is a parliament. Yes, there are political parties, but they almost mean nothing. as Özge Hanım said, that the parliament is just a symbolic thing. Everything is happening at the presidential palace. And everybody got aware that unless everybody is coming together, they can run the country. Nobody's power is enough to shape the country, to run the country, to promise the people a better future. It is true for both, the CHP and E party, and for the newcomers as well. And that's why it is an obligation. And that's why we need to believe in. I think that's a bit credible. Of course, there are real structural problems just laying in behind of us, just in front of us, whether it will be possible, because this is the first experience we are seeing right now. Such kind of a very different political backgrounds are coming together and trying to agree upon a common values, a joint, declaration. It's happening for the first time, and that's why first we cannot be too much romantic and everything will be good. No, it is not promising us a rose garden, but we should give a credit. We should have a trust in, unless we see it will be unsuccessful, then we can decide on it. And that's why I think to an extent it is credible, as Özge Hanım just underlined, and you have mentioned the basic principles and targets, which was declared at the end of May during the meeting hosted by Mr. Davutoğlu. We are talking about values. If you look at this, 10 principles, at the first 5 principles lines were starting with libertarian democracy. It is a value. Okay, they are just underlining this. They are just promising about the freedom of press, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and they are all based on values. We can discuss about on the practicality and the possibilities of such kind of a coalition and how they can run the country, because probably they do not know, because they didn't have such kind of a coalition before. Yes, Turkey had experienced such kind of Milliyetçi Cephe, nationalist front governments, but they are just a practical coalition. They were especially mainly established after the elections. But still, we have at least 1 year to the elections. And these meetings, yes, it was started at the beginning, during 2020, but the pandemic was making it very difficult for the parties coming together. But at the outset of this year, 2022, they came together. And they started to declare something, especially, this strengthened parliamentarian system. It is more than a proposal of a system. It is something like a mini constitutional amendments, because it is promising something for the women. It is promising some democratic, steps for the Kurds. It is promising a much more, pluralistic country. And that's why if such kind of a political combination were being formed suddenly, not after such kind of a huge process, both CHP and the conservative parties, they have seen their limits, and that's why they are coming together. And that's why I think we need to give a credit to this. Otherwise, suddenly suppose that just to be a government after the elections, 6 or 7 parties are coming together and just summing up their seats at the parliament. Yes, we should have much bigger question marks regarding to what extent they are sincere. But now, before the elections, at least 1 year before the elections, they are coming together and they are not bargaining on the seats. They are not bargaining on the ministries. They are not bargaining on the state, institutions, but they are bargaining on the values. And when they are tweeting and making some social media appearances, they are taking care of the others' concerns. And that's why I think it is important.
Thank you very much. A positive outlook or a positive evaluation of what's
I
going on
have
so far.
much, by the way, just not to be too much optimist about it.
Okay, but before asking Özge, maybe I can ask Sezin from a bit more distant or a bit more neutral position, whether this sounds for the voters credible that these parties now have discovered, especially democratic values, to fight for and to defend, or whether this is rather difficult to pass the message with the background of these parties and politicians involved.
I think we're at a point where I'm going to take a terminology from the conflict resolution literature. We are in a place where there's a hurting stalemate. William Zartman's terminology is this one, the hurting stalemate. And when you're at a position like this, you really want to change things are and engage in conflict resolution because it's hurting you. I think this is what's happening with the Turkish electorate in general, with the economic crisis. And if we think counterfactually, had there not been an economic crisis and economic issues were going totally fine in Turkey, then maybe we wouldn't have seen the opposition rising so much. In that sense, the electorate is viewing the opposition with new eyes, but also at the same time, the opposition is, of course, renewing itself. And I think one of the reasons, key factors behind this is local politics, actually. Because now we have, for example, there was one photograph a few months ago. There was this meeting of CHP of the mayors in the easternmost city of Van. And at the table, there was Mansur Yavaş, Ankara's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, Istanbul's mayor, and Tunç Soyer, Izmir's mayor, sitting all together at the same table. And I thought that when seeing this photo, it's almost 70% of the Turkish electorate support sitting at one table. And current CHP has this. It's not just about Ankara and the party elite, let's say, or this table of six, but it's a multitude of new characters coming to the fore, and even the old characters are rebranding themselves. So we have now, I liken the Turkish political scene, the opposition political scene, to Avengers in a way. You have superheroes that you can pick and choose from. You can like that character or the other one better, but you can pick and choose, and there are a multitude of them. So I think this is strengthening the opposition, and we are seeing the opposition with new eyes, and at the same time the opposition, old figures, even old figures like Meral Akşener or Ahmet Davutoğlu are rebranding themselves because they have to compete, and they're taking this competition really seriously. So they are evaluating and re-evaluating their opinions. I know that most of these leaders are working really engaged full-time with the grassroots. So they are reflecting, they're either having polls conducted, research always coming to them, or they are somehow at touch with the grassroots, and they are trying to rebrand what they're saying. They're evaluating themselves, and they're engaging in self-criticism. And in that sense, that brings a big dynamism to the Turkey's opposition as it never happened before. So in that sense, there is a two-way street there, both from the elected side and also from the opposition side. There's an interaction and dynamism, a synergy in a way, nurturing itself.
So then let's try to get a little more concrete on some of the issues. Osman Bey has already mentioned that in the parliamentary system that is proposed, there will be also something for the Kurds. Sezin Hanım now mentioned that CHP mayors met in Van, but the Kurds are not at the table of the six. What can they expect from the six parties, from the Millet Alliance? I mean, the Kurdish votes were decisive in the 2019 municipal elections. They were the kingmakers in Istanbul, Ankara, Mersin, and Adana, and where they had their own candidates, like in Balıkesir, the AKP won. So what can the Millet Alliance offer them? What will be on the table for the Kurds to vote with the alliance, or at least in majority? Maybe we start with Özge Hanım and then with Osman Bey.
So you asked the critical question to me first. Yeah. Now we are hearing rumors from the governing party that there will be a new peace process on the way, and but I don't think that most of the members of the HDP will support this, because there is also another case for closing down the party is ongoing right now, and there will be a political ban if the court agrees on this for 300 Kurdish politicians. So it's I think that kind of move will change. I think in two ways there will be a change. If there will be a new process, a new peace process that will all Kurdish people will agree on by the governing party, because it has a one single ballot right now. I think the governing party has on Kurdish people for me right now, and also the closure of the possible closure of the HDP. So there are two things at stake for me, and it depends on the it depends on the candidate, I think, coming from the table of 6 that the HDP will decide to support or not. So I'm giving floor to Mr. Osman.
Yeah, maybe because you said that there will be something in the strengthened parliamentary system. So are there any like current denominators that these 6 can agree on, like language rights or education? Is there anything concrete that they can offer the Kurds to join the alliance or to vote for the alliance?
Yeah. First of all, let's balance this positive picture. These parties are coming together, not suddenly they just enlightened regarding the future of the country and decided let's come together. It is not true. They are coming together because of the practical obligations, which is just starts one by one. Regarding CHP, the AK Party government lost already, more than 10% votes, but just 2 or 3% went to CHP, though it is the biggest opposition party. But about 5% just went to E-Party. However, E-Party is far away from number 1 central right party. And even they come together, CHP and E-Party, the People's Alliance, Millet İttifakı, hasn't enough power to change the government. And finally, the newcomers, Gelecek and Deva Partisi, they were just so ambitious, but they haven't received enough votes, sufficient enough to be so strong to be an alternative to the AK Party. And that's why they came together. This is the obligations of numbers. It is something very important. Regarding the Kurdish issue, as Sezen Hanım said, from the conflict resolution terminology, if you start with the issue on which you have the biggest disagreements, probably the table will be dispersed suddenly. And the Kurdish issue is the most difficult issue, but not only for the table of 6, but for all the political parties. It is almost one of the very, deep-rooted problematic thing for the, the Kurdish to go this. And why is HDP here? Yes, it's a legitimate question, but we shouldn't forget that HDP is just having another alliance with the leftist parties. And if you brought HDP, it means that you want to kill the table of 6. And that's why we should be realistic, not romantic. If we want HDP and E-Party sit together and talk about the Turkish, what does it mean? That we do not want table of 6 to live, to survive, to be sustainable. And that's why we should be realistic about how they can go. But it doesn't mean that the Kurdish votes are important for table of 6 to win the elections. But now for the HDP and the Kurdish, voters, and they of course they have alternatives, but they cannot go to the ballots. It is important. Suppose that 10% of HDP voters are not going to the ballot. What does it mean? 5% will go to President Erdogan, and 5% will go to the other candidate of the opposition. But then they will be accepting that the current system they do not have the constitutional rights even to be elected and to elect somebody, because whoever they are elected, either they are being imprisoned or somebody other from the government is being appointed by the Minister of Interior. But with the new system, with the new government, the CHP and E-Party and the Saadet parties and Gelecek and Deva, they have some coalition partners over there. Okay, and suppose that the Gelecek Partisi first, and secondly the Deva Partisi put the mother language to their party program. For a rightist conservative parties to be too much democratic, to be democratic never is too much. It is not a gift to the Kurds. It is their own rights to have this, but it is an important step. And there are such kind of parties defending the rights, very real rights of the Kurds over there. But the problems, yes, as long as E-Party is staying over there, expecting too bigger steps from table of 6 will be not realistic. Then there may be some modus vivendi or some middle ways to agree upon. But as Sezen Hanım said, the people are voting for table of 6 not because they believe in their values, but because of the economic crisis. And the economic crisis is cutting through the Kurdish people as well, not only the Turks. It is not making any kind of the discrimination between the Turks or Kurds or the left or the leftist or the rightist or different parts of everybody is suffering from the economic crisis, and that's why they are voting for the opposition. But still, when we look at to our polls, public surveys, the people do not have a trust in the opposition that they can solve the economic problems, but they cannot have a trust in the government either. And that's why it is a problem for the politics. Neither the government nor the opposition has the capacity to convince the people that they can solve the economic problem. It's a very complicated thing. And that's why we need to see for the journalists, for the political analysis, for the academics, it will be a very interesting period that we need to observe and to understand the dynamics of the opposition and the people.
Thanks a lot. Özge Hanım wanted to add something.
Well, there is a text of agreement for a strengthening parliamentary system. They declared in February, as far as I remember, this year. In the first article, fundamental rights and freedoms, it's saying that fundamental rights and freedoms will be guaranteed for all people, regardless of language, religion, sex, race, gender, political or social affiliation, and our domestic law shall be made compatible with the international standards. And also there's another, I just look at the language side. Persons covered by the law shall not be able to discriminate anybody in their dealings on grounds of language, religion, sex, philosophical belief, political thought, race, gender, regionalism, or similar reasons, and shall not be engaged in actions and discourse that are contrary to fundamental rights and freedoms and behaviors or practices. Okay, so this is, I think, too premature to say that the HDP will react on behalf or not for the Millet İttifakı right now. We will see there will be I think there will be a political process during this 6 or 8 months. We will see, and there also there has been rumors that there will be an early elections in the September. This kind of rumor is going a little bit far away right now, but there is a new election date in the political rumors. It's the 14th of May 2023. So there will be a candidate. There's a candidacy debate right now. For instance, as you are saying, the Good Party and HDP cannot be acting together. Yes, it's a kind of belief that we are having too, but it depends on the candidate too. So the stakes on candidate is getting much and much higher right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we come to the economy and the economic situation that Osman Bey mentioned, I want to touch upon another value issue, and this is migration and refugees. It seems that the opposition or some parts of the opposition are more radical than the governing party and have this position of deporting a large part, if not the majority of refugees currently in Turkey to their countries of origin, which is a totally unrealistic position, that you cannot send back 5-6 million of people. Why is it that this position is advocated and not a more realistic approach of integrating most of these refugees? Because I think all parties know that the big majority of the refugees and migrants, they will stay. Maybe Sezin Hanım can start with a short comment on this, why the opposition chose the way it behaved.
Well, it's the populist soft belly of the opposition, actually, and because the perceptions regarding the refugees is very, very negative, cutting across all segments of the society, and the opposition is giving way to that, into that, and perhaps there is no other way at this moment to give them credit, because it's really, really difficult to make an argument also for activists, let's say, or individuals, even to say something positive, something mildly positive about the refugees. So it's really the red line for most of the electorate, whether one likes it or not. There is this very, very negative perception and sentiments, and it's getting deeper and deeper rooted. So I don't see a way out of it in the very near future, actually. I might throw a working hypothesis to the table regarding also to the Kurdish question. I think in general, the approach of the electorate regarding the Kurdish question maybe has softened due to the refugee issue, actually, because somehow Kurds have become this more native part of the local part of the Turkish society, autochthonous in a way, part of the Turkish society that has always been there, always been part of the republic one way or the other. It's a working hypothesis, and I don't have data to support that, but there might be a side like this. The real nationalist issue in Turkey now is the refugee issue, in my view, and it's the biggest source of debate. For example, also attitudes towards Kurdish, and about that I have data from Konda, for example, is becoming softer. But if you ask Arabic now, it would be just the contrary. So there is that softening, but at the same time, HDP, criminalization of HDP in the image has been complete and has also become deep-rooted. To be honest, when you, according to the research I was engaged in. So aside from the HDP electorate and the Kurdish electorate, to a really majority, unfortunately, this image projected by AK Party that HDP is a criminal organization has become a generally accepted thing. But at the same time, currently, I think one of the lucky sides of Turkish politics is that, for example, you have a co-leader of HDP like Mithat Sancar. He's a skillful negotiator, and I think he's providing a lot of backdoor channels with the opposition in general. For example, individuals like this bring a softer stance and play a big role behind the scenes, in my view. In that sense, yes, the refugee issue is a thorny issue, and new parties like Zafer Partisi of Ümit Özdağ will try to make a bigger issue out of it, and individual politicians like Tanju Özcan, the mayor of Bolu, controversial figure in local politics, they're, I think, going to be making use of the refugee issue, pushing the whole discussion to a more far-right position, and I think it's inevitable. There is no way out of that. But still, in my view, to give credit to CHP, I think they're providing quite... on the one hand, yes, there are controversial and harsh statements, but at the same time, they're providing... they're trying to provide logical, really worked out solutions too. so there are two sides of the HDP in a way, coexisting at the same time. They're trying to bring pragmatic resolution to the issue, and it's not just about let's push all of them out.
Okay, so I understand it's kind of realpolitik, and also to have a point to score against the government. Do you agree with this analysis by and large, Osman Bey and Özge Hanım, or why was it chosen?
Well, right now in Turkey, it's supposed to be 100,000 refugees coming from Syria. But right now, from all the nations, like Afghans, there are 505 million refugees, according to numbers of the migration agency. Well, the refugee is like the. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keeping the dog away. Refugee issue is one of the top issues in the country right now, and there's and it's 90%, as far as I know, maybe Sezen knows better. 90% of people, according to the polls, do not want refugees. They want them to return to their homes. But also the politics has to act accordingly. For instance, when I share something with share something about refugees, saying something positive on, for instance, their problematic economic problems or stuff like that. I'm criticizing all the time from social media that they are targeting me. For instance, there is another journalist called Nevşin Mengü, and all the time she has trolls coming from mainly from Zafer Party, the Victor Party, the newly established party, and it's using the refugee issue as a kind of a populist issue. And yesterday he wanted to go to Hatay, and he wanted to just
Mines.
Just set mines to the border of Syria and Turkey. So it's a kind of populist policy, but it has roots. Unfortunately, it has some roots. Well, if there will be a new coalition government, or what we will see, the international law should be implemented, and also CHP is saying is that Turkey must meet with Damascus. It was all the time that CHP was saying for like 10 years or 20 years. Anyway, but people do not want to return back to Syria. This is also another issue that we have to discuss. So it's a hot topic on the agenda, and I'm just saying that Sezen is, I think, very accurate when saying that the Kurdish issue is not the main topic right now. It's the migrant issue that is the that will be the next item on the political debates. But unfortunately, there are so many hatred to refugees, and also we are now facing with another war, Ukrainian-Russian war. So many Ukrainians have came to Turkey. So many Russians have came to Turkey too, mainly to Antalya, I think, as far as I know, to the Mediterranean region. So Turkey is facing new dilemmas in the region. Not from the Syrian or Afghan refugees, we can say, and also from refugees from the Western countries. So, well, the integration process, that there are a number of PICTAS schools, the EU program like PICTAS, it's saying, it's located in 13 provinces in Turkey. and they are giving education to Syrian migrants, children. It's in Ankara, Izmir, and Istanbul. In the EU delegation site, you can find the information. So there is a kind of integration is also going on with EU projects. So nobody is aware of it. I think I want to underline it. There is on one hand, there is a kind of integration from EU, and these schools are integrated with Ministry of Education. So we are on the we are living in a kind of a chaotic age. There are so many problems. We have severe economic problems every day that we are living. For independent agencies, it's like the inflation rate is 157. I'm saying independent, not the state agencies. Well, but we are facing on daily basis. Our money is just going away. Is not valued anymore. So I think maybe when we return, the first topic of the difference between Hungary and Turkey is maybe the difference is the economic side.
Okay, because, then let's look at the economic problems that Osman Bey already said. This is the major problem right now. But if that's the case, then wouldn't it be smarter for the opposition to come up with an economic program to say how and in which ways what they would do against high prices, against the inflation, to create more growth? Why is there no an economic main problem? Why is there so far the stress on democratic values that maybe the voters don't really care so much about in such a deep economic crisis? Who wants to answer? But maybe since Osman Bey has mentioned it already, that that's the main issue, then maybe you have to keep with it.
I will say briefly two things. For like 2 years, CHP has economy tables. There are so many deputies, like 3 and 4 deputies is going to one, 3 and 4 deputies are going to Trabzon, and meeting with the local merchants and also the landowners and stuff like that, people like that, I'm sorry, and they are writing reports on that. And I think it's on CHP's website, and also they just made an economic proposals, but the table of 6, I think, has a generic kind of economic response to yet. But there's a trick in the politics. If you say something to solve this problem right now, AKP can use it. It's also
if I can jump in, just a few words regarding the migration issue. It is a very problematic thing, and unfortunately, none of the parties are sincere, both not to the refugees or to the Turkish public. Nobody can send them back to their countries, and they know this. Even the CHP members and others know that they cannot fulfill their promises. I have met with some experts on this issue, and they have said that they already informed the CHP people, and they have said that, yes, you are right, but whenever we are criticizing the government on the refugee thing, and we are telling that we will send the refugees back to their countries, we are getting the most strong positive response from the people, and that's why we will continue this. As one of my journalist friends from the United Kingdom said that if it bleeds, it leads. It's a populist thing. Though they won't be able to fulfill their promises, they will continue this. And unfortunately, the government hasn't any kind of comprehensive solution for the refugee thing. Just it has left it to free floating, and that's why they are not sincere as well. None of the parties are telling that, okay, we will let these people to live and work and has some rights in this country, but they are just leaving this to the unresolved, frozen the point that they can exploit. Let's go to the economic things. If the economy was going good, and if President Erdogan was performing good regarding the economy, probably the next election will be won by President Erdogan again. It is an important question. Why it's so? Why people are not just leaving, the governing party because of all these injustices and then the pressure on, the legal affairs, and just, regarding kicking off the academics just because of what they are thinking and expressing their belief. It's a very big question. I think it's a bit a result of identity politics. But the economic crisis, it is true for the refugee things as well. Suppose that we shouldn't forget that since 2017, the number of refugees are the same. But it is a problem today. Why? Because of the economic problem, because of the economic crisis. And the people are looking for a scapegoat for who is responsible for this. And they are putting the blame on the poor refugees. And especially then from the governing who are voting for AK Party and MHP as well, because they do not want to put the blame on the government, but on the refugees as well. And another thing, unfortunately, none of the opposition parties, except Deva Partisi and Gelecek, they are a bit part of the the AK Party. They do not have an economic success story at their background. Okay, both on the local authorities or the central government, none of these parties have a very strong economic success story, and they can come and say that, look, we have done it and we can do it again. They cannot say this. And still, President Erdogan is giving an impression, a perception that he is the only man who can run the country. But day by day, he is losing this credibility because of what's happening at the economy. And he was not able to keep his promises, because he was just promising that he will be keeping, the inflation under control, both the currencies under control, and the interest rate under control, which is an impossible thing regarding the economic terminology. And as long as it is being understood that Erdogan is not capable enough to solve the problems, then the people will just decide that they need to try the opposition, not because they really believe in the opposition can solve it, but they are thinking that, according to our polls as well, any kind of president which will be supported by the opposition will run the country better than today. Not exactly in ideal terms, but better than today, because the government is running the country very badly. And that's why the Turkey won't be choosing between white and black and white, but darker gray, which is very close to dark, but a lighter gray regarding, the economic, issues, regarding democracy. For instance, still I do not know what CHP is offering regarding Kurdish issue or the definition of citizenship or other things, but it will be much lighter gray than what's happening today. And that is, I think, the main motivation of the people. They will vote for the opposition.
Thank you. And maybe as another issue shortly to touch upon, which is not directly so related to something with values, but where maybe you can say something about whether there are any differences between the governing party or the governing coalition and the opposition, would be foreign policy. So do you see any differences concerning Syria, Iraq, military operations, EU accession process, or now the confrontation with Greece? Would there be anything different with the opposition at government? Maybe we can start with Sezin Hanım, and then you can shortly comment on that.
Well, actually, this is one of the questions I'm always getting from foreign audiences outside Turkey, and they're really questioning that. In that sense, that means that somehow the opposition must really explain itself better or more, just try to explain itself regarding foreign policy issues to these audiences, not the Turkish electorate itself, because foreign policy, of course, is not the biggest debate in Turkey or in any other place. But still, I think there are mild changes. Now, for example, even a nationalist leader like Meral Akşener is meeting diverse, for example, EU delegation, etc., is trying to make some gestures to show a more cosmopolitan stance towards foreign policy. But still, I think it's really the mayors of Turkey, the local politicians of Turkey, who are more engaged in foreign interaction. Like Ekrem İmamoğlu, who went to the Munich Security Conference, for example, though as a mayor, it was sort of interesting that he was there. But also Mansur Yavaş does that, Tunç Soyer does that. They're giving importance to foreign relations and really have this interaction. For example, Mansur Yavaş, one of the first visits that he did was visiting then London Mayor Sadık Khan. For example, it was, they're giving importance to such gestures. As far as, of course, as far as opposition is concerned, I think CHP has the biggest, is the most cosmopolitan party, or at least should be in the looking at its background and everything. So foreign policy-wise, though we had some up and coming in negative reactions from Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu regarding European Union, like they don't want the money of European Union as far as refugees are concerned, or again regarding the refugee issue, Joe Biden was criticized that there was a secret deal between the US and Erdogan. Still, I think CHP is the most cosmopolitan party, though for regarding foreign policy issues, but it can utilize so much more, mobilize so much the resources it has, because it has also branches abroad, etc. There's a strong dynamic electorate supporting, who can be supporting CHP abroad. So I think they can do much more. But at the same time, let's not forget that Ahmet Davutoğlu and of course Babacan, they have the already experience of having dealt with foreign policy issues. And of course, I think this whole opposition alliance all together in that sense is can be acting together, and in one part the one side might be supporting the other, etc. There can be, I think, once in government, let's say, there can be much more a unified, let's say, team work regarding foreign policy.
On this issue, maybe briefly in 1-2 minutes, what concrete things would be different with the Millet Alliance in government and foreign policy issues?
Maybe just I can leave the last words to Özge Hanım. What will be different? First of all, the relations with the European Union probably different. Not because the opposition parties has a very clear and cut vision regarding membership to the European Union, but Turkey doesn't have any other alternative. And unfortunately today, the Erdogan government has chosen a very asymmetric relations with Russia. It is too close to Russia, and the European Union and the United States are the only others that the Ankara can balance the Moscow effect in Turkey. And probably since especially the Western countries already exploited all their trust in President Erdogan. That's why especially, for instance, the American Minister of Foreign Affairs, Secretary of State, didn't visit Turkey during the last 2 years. They have visited the countries in the region maybe more than 2 or 3 times. But the Western countries strategically and intentionally prefer not to touch with, not to have strong contact with the Erdogan government. And probably they will have given a new credit to the new Turkish government, and then the new government will be in need this support to balance the Russian influence. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for Turkey. But we should be very careful and rationalist. We shouldn't be expecting too much, changes in foreign policy, because it is independent from whether President Erdogan is ruling the country. But Turkey has very legitimate and real concerns regarding security, regarding Eastern Mediterranean, regarding what the Greece is doing, and regarding the Caucasus, and because of this, the domestic politics and what President Erdogan doing in the country and outside the country, we shouldn't mix them up too much. But the main problem is the asymmetric relations with the Russian Federation and the personal relations with President Erdogan and Mr. Putin, and it should be balanced. And I think it may be different, but it is not during a one-night solution. It needs a transition period. And at the end of the day, the Western countries, especially the European Union, should decide what they will do with Turkey. They have a playbook regarding if everything goes bad, what they will be doing with Turkey, excluding, you know, all the chapters from the EU process. But they don't know what to do if everything goes well, whether they are really ready to get Turkey inside the European Union or for the Americans. And that's why they need to decide this as well, whether they want relations with Turkey just to cope with conjunctural things, or they are really looking for a structural cooperation with Turkey. It will change and shape the decision and the foreign policy of the new government as well.
Thank you. If Özgehan wants to add anything to the foreign policy dimension, please do so. Unmuting yourself, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. The relations with the EU, I'm agreeing with Mr. Osman that the EU relations will change, but there is an ongoing process that the EU doesn't want new members anymore. It wants Ukraine, but not Western Balkans, as far as from the last summit of Council of Europe meeting. There is another EU process going on right now, and Turkey is seen as an external relations and in ISMET problem right now. In the from the EU side, our situation is like this, but Kılıçdaroğlu has declared a roadmap to EU like a couple of weeks ago. With 9 or 10, I'm just opening some documents from here about visa liberalizations, blockage on chapters 23, 24, and also there is another issue: foreign policy steps must be taken to prevent Turkey's isolation in the East Mediterranean. So this is one of the issues with Greece and Cyprus at the same time, and sometimes that. The EU is acting according to them, their decisions. But there is another thing that is going wrong in foreign policy, is that the palace is deciding the foreign policy steps. Minister of Foreign Affairs is ignored, unfortunately, as far as we can see, as far as some discussions coming from inside. The institutionalized policy has been changed, and it's like a change to a Trump-style politics. But there will be a change in that kind of, I think, steps. The Minister of Foreign Affairs will be more crucial than the palace if we transfer into strengthening parliamentary system.
Thank you very much for this last answer, but also for all your contributions. I wanted to touch upon some other issues. At the beginning, I thought 75 minutes is very long, but now it turns out to be that it could have been longer. The role of the media, for example, both in Hungary and Turkey, we couldn't find time this time. I'm sure, I mean, the issue at all will not be discussed for the last time. If there are elections scheduled normally, we have almost one more year to go, and the issue will come up many times. So many thanks for your participation and for your contributions. And I would also like to thank the team at Medyascope for their technical support, Katz for making it possible, of course, and ELIAMEP for all its support. As I said at the beginning, there will be a policy brief, a couple of pages where I will summarize the main findings of this webinar that will be published, and also on the ELIAMEP website and also on the Katz network. And so we've come to an end. I wish you all a not too hot summer. Stay healthy, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
A summer without fires, hopefully.